Namaskar everyone and welcome to the Gita Satsang. Let us start with Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतक्लेशनाशाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः। रामानुजदया पात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकं। यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुग्म व्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये। So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us start our shloka for today. So in the previous satsang, we had stopped at the 9th shloka. Today we will take up shlokas 10, 11 and 12. So in the 5th chapter, 10th shloka, Krishna tells Arjuna, Brahmanyadhyaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate na sapapena padma patra mivambhasa. Those who dedicate their actions to God, abandoning all attachment, remain untouched by sin, just as a lotus leaf is untouched by water. Abandoning means giving up. So people who are the karma yogis who are going to do actions, but they dedicate those actions to God and they give up all attachment, such yogis remain untouched by sin. No papa can attach to them. In what manner? Just as a lotus leaf is untouched by water. So, in the previous shlokas, Krishna had told Arjuna about how a karma yogi should think. He should feel that all the actions which are being performed, they are happening, they are being done because it is the nature of the senses to do those actions. Whether it is the jnanendriya or the karmendriya, the very nature of those organs is to do action. So those senses are doing the actions. It is not I, the Jivatma, who is doing all this. That should be the bhava of the Karma Yoga. So here the Acharyas say that now when Krishna told this statement, there were certain doubts which arose in the mind of Arjuna. So when those doubts come to Arjuna's mind, in answer to those unspoken questions of his, Krishna is giving the answer in this shloka. So what were those doubts which Arjuna had after listening to the previous explanation? First, he wants to know, will I get any benefit if I do actions for an inferior phala? Now I am doing all these actions. Is there going to be some benefit that will come to me when I do those? And especially if it is for a phala, for a fruit, for an outcome, which is very inferior in nature, which belongs to this worldly life. Second question in Arjuna's mind is that, okay, I am doing the action and Krishna is telling that I have to give up the sense of doership. I should not have ownership over that action. Then, but what way it is going to be used to me? I am not giving up the action. I am doing, still I am continuing to do the actions. It's only that I am giving up the ownership or doership. In what way is this going to have any benefit for me? That is the doubt in Arjuna's mind. And thirdly, he has a doubt that, okay, is it really possible to say that I will do the action and then I am not going to be affected by it? Because in this world, whatever we do, we are doing actions because we want a particular outcome or we want some result to come out of that. How is it possible to do what? How is it possible that something will work like this? That we will do the action and we will not be affected by whatever is the effect of that action. Is that possible? How can we stay unaffected by that? These are the questions in the mind of Arjuna. So, in answer to these unspoken questions, Krishna is giving the answer in this shloka. So, what is the first question Arjuna has? That if I do actions for any phala, will I get some benefit out of it? So, Krishna is saying no. And that is why he is telling him that Sangam Tyaktva, give up the desire. What desire? The desire for any kind of an inferior phala, anything which is an outcome you are expecting in this world, give up that desire. Now, it is told many times, right, that even a fool will do actions only if he is motivated to do that. None of us, we never do any act, all of us, we never do any actions where there is not some outcome that we are looking for. Without motivation, if you have absolutely no desire for anything, then naturally it will follow that you don't have the motivation to do any action also. Ultimately, we do have some kind of desire in our mind. So it is not possible to cut off the motivation and continue to perform the action. So, how is it that this is going to be applied here? So, what is the implied meaning? That you have to have some desire to do your karma yoga. What is that desire going to be? That is up to you. Are you going to do all these karmas which are prescribed because you want a better job, you want a promotion, you want to have a good wife or a husband, you want to have children, you want to get more money in this world, you want to have a bigger house? Are you going to do things, or you want name and fame? Like, right? So, like this, do you do your actions? Do you do the karma yoga for some phala which is only getting you benefits in this world, which is an inferior phala? Or you can do for the superior phala of Atma Sakshatkara. So it is up to us to choose what are the outcomes that we want. It is definitely recommended by Krishna that you do the actions with your eye on what kind of phala, the superior phala of getting Atma Sakshatkara. So have such a superior desire. If you are going to do Karma Yoga and your only purpose in doing that Karma Yoga is to get something which is of benefit to you in this world, then it is considered as an inferior phala and you will absolutely not get any benefits of doing such kinds of karma yoga when your motivation is to get some worldly benefit. The second question that Arjuna asked was, I will do the action, but I will give up the ownership. In what way this is going to be of any benefit to me? So here Krishna is telling that when you do such actions, when you perform karma yoga, but do not take kartritva, do not take ownership of that action, then the benefit that you are getting is you are doing the action, but there is nothing that is going to attach to you because you have done that action. Now, here Krishna is specifically telling that Papa will not attach itself to that person who does action without taking ownership. Now, equally, it is true that punya will also not attach, right? But we are not so much concerned about punya not attaching. We are more concerned about papa not attaching. So that is what Krishna is specifying here, saying that when you do action, you perform the karma, but you do not have kartritva bhava. You don't do that thinking that I am doing it. Then, in that case, whatever you are doing, if you are doing a good thing, then punya is actually supposed to come, but it will not come to you because you are not claiming ownership of that action. If you do something and some mistake happens, something goes wrong, Papa also will not attach to you because you are not claiming ownership of that action. And that is the benefit that you get when you do Karma Yoga by giving up the sense of doership. Now, does this mean that we will do wrong things then? Because anyway, okay, I will do and then Papa will not attach? No, that's not the thing here. Because basically the idea is you are doing Karma Yoga without Kartritva. Now, that is not going to be possible for a person who is setting out with the intention of doing wrong, isn't it? Because when he's having this idea that he knows it is wrong and he's going to do it, then he is not at all, what he is doing is definitely not karma yoga. So that question doesn't arise at all. Many times we do certain actions, and in the process of doing one action, without knowing, without realizing, there may be some papas that come to us because of mistakes we make or because of not doing those actions perfectly. So in such cases, if you have done the action with sincerity, by offering it to the Lord without taking ownership of that action, then Papa will not attach itself to us. That is the benefit that we are going to get. The third question that Arjuna has in his mind is that how is this possible in reality? Can somebody do the action and still stay unaffected by what is the outcome? Can they be so great that they will say, okay, I'm only doing the action, I'm not bothered about the outcome? So here Krishna is giving the example that yes, it is very much possible, and that you should be like the Padma Patra. What is this Padma Patra? We know Padma means lotus and Patra is leaf. So the lotus leaf. Now, what is the story of this lotus leaf? That lotus plant grows up from water itself. Even if it is extremely dirty water, the lotus flower will grow there. The water, the plant is in the water itself, and yet the leaf of that lotus, which is touching the water, many times the water gets onto the leaf, but it does not get wetted by that water. Similarly, like this, the lotus leaf is living in the water but is not getting wetted by it. Similarly, the Karma Yogi has to live in this world and do all his actions by living in this world, but he should not get affected by it. Like the lotus leaf should be the attitude of this Karma Yogi. So these are the things which Krishna has explained here. So let us look again at the shloka. What he is saying, those who dedicate the actions to God, that means you don't take ownership for it, abandoning all attachment. Don't be attached to the outcome of that action. Don't have any inferior phala in your mind. Give up all attachment to the outcome. Such people remain untouched by sin. How? Just like a lotus leaf is untouched by water. So these are the things that Krishna has explained in this shloka to give the answer to the questions in Arjuna's mind. Now going further, he explains little more about what happens when yogis perform actions like this. So in the 11th shloka, Krishna says, Kayena manasa buddhya केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वात्मशुद्धये. The yogis, while giving up attachment, perform actions with their body, senses, mind, and intellect only for the purpose of self-purification. So we were saying that nobody will do any action without any motivation. Now here, if this yogi wants to have some outcome that he wants, he should realize that I don't want any outcomes of this world, but I only want to have the outcome of purifying myself. Antar Shuddhi. That is what I am looking for. So here Krishna is saying that all great yogis, they are behaving in this manner. All the yogis, they use their body, they use their mind, they use their intellect, they use their senses. And by using all these, they are performing actions. But why are they doing the actions? All their actions are meant for the purpose of serving God. And why is it that they want to see that service to God as their motive? Because they know that there is nothing for me to enjoy in this world. Whatever I am doing in this world is for the Lord to enjoy. I am doing everything for His enjoyment. If you remember, when we talked about the Navavida Sambandha between the Atma and the Paramatma, between the Lord and us, we talked about how He is Pita, Rakshaka, and all that. And one of those Sambandhas is that the Lord is the Bhokta, He is the enjoyer, and we are the Bhogyam. We are the items which are enjoyed by the Lord. Right? So, like for example, suppose let us say you like sweets and you like gulab jamun and you eat gulab jamun. Now, in this case, that achit vastu, that insentient gulab jamun, is the bhogyam. It is the item which is being enjoyed. And you, as the consumer who is enjoying the taste of that gulab jamun, you are the bhokta. But in reality, whatever we are doing in this world, all our actions are the bhogyam. Our actions, everything, we are the bhogyam. We are the items to be enjoyed. And who is the supreme enjoyer? It is the Lord Himself. So if we realize this, then we will do all our actions for the purpose of giving joy to the Lord. Recently, I was attending some classes on some topic related to our granthas, and in that there was this explanation was given about how the Lord is having this universe as his Leela Vibhuti, and he has the Vaikuntha as the Nitya Vibhuti. So that Nitya Vibhuti is the permanent abode that is always there, that is not subject to change. That also is belonging to the Lord. And this Leela Vibhuti, where we are, living, and this universe which is going to go after Pradaya and all that, this is called as a Leela Vibhuti. So we are saying the Lord is enjoying. Now, there are actually, it was told, there are two types of enjoyment that we give to the Lord. One is when we behave foolishly, when we do things in this world and we get caught up with those things that we are doing, then we are giving enjoyment to the Lord. What enjoyment is that? That kind of enjoyment, the Lord will laugh out of, at our foolishness, that how foolish these people are. I have given them this deha, I have given them this atma, I have given them this manushya janma, and still, without realizing the value of it and without using it to come to me, they are just wasting it by getting caught up in all these worldly things. So that is one kind of joy that we give to the Lord. But there is another kind of joy also that we can give to the Lord. That is when we do the right things, when we follow the path which is prescribed by the Shastras, when we follow whatever the Lord has told in the Upanishads, in the Vedas, in the Bhagavad Gita, and all the scriptures that He has given us, when we follow that and make sincere efforts to reach Him, then that also gives joy to the Lord. But that is a different kind of ananda for the Lord. So it is up to us to decide what kind of joy we want to give to the Lord. Whether we are going to get caught up in this worldly things and give that, joy where the Lord is laughing at our foolishness, or we want to be good. It is like they compared it to a child and the parent. Now, when there is a small child and it does certain actions, right? That child playing some game or doing some activity or trying something new for the first time, there also the father and mother are laughing. Why? They are laughing that, oh, this child doesn't know still how to do things. See, it's trying to learn, and see what all it is doing, and see how it is falling down, or see how it is not managing to do it. Like that, or say the child is babbling something. When children learn to speak, they first just go on babbling, isn't it? They don't have clear words. Their language is not clear. They are trying to say small, small words. That time also the parents laugh because that child has not yet learned. That is one kind of laughter of the parents. When this child grows older and starts going to school and becomes more mature and starts studying well, and when that child is studying well in school, that child is well behaved to the teachers, to the parents, and everybody, when that child starts doing whatever is expected of that child to be done at that particular age, and it is, living a ideal life, then that also gives joy to the parents. That joy is different from the joy which they had when the child was doing foolish things, but both of them are joy. But which would you say is the superior kind of joy? It is undoubtedly when the child does what is expected of it to be done, when that child is studying well and behaving well and being a good child, isn't it? So, similarly, as sadhakas, as karma yogis, when we are doing whatever actions we are performing, we can use our body, mind, and intellect, and we can do those actions. What should be our purpose? To give joy to the Lord. And what kind of joy should we want to give? The joy where the Lord feels happy looking at our efforts to improve ourselves, our efforts to reach towards Him. So, if we do our actions with this kind of bhava, if we use whatever the Lord has given us this body, this mind, this senses, the intellect, everything when we use to perform actions in the best way possible to give joy to the Lord, then by such actions, our papa reduces. Whatever old karmas we have from Janma Janma, that effect of those karmas, the papa which we have to undergo because of that, all those start reducing. And when the papa effect start reducing, that means we have started to become purified. And that is what is self-purification. So that is what Krishna is telling here, that the yogis, who are these yogis, how you can identify that they are yogis? They give up attachment, they perform actions using their body, senses, mind, and intellect, but their only purpose is that by doing this, I will purify myself for the purpose of giving joy to the Lord. That is the superior phala, that I will purify myself. Because the Lord can have everything, He doesn't need anything. Actually, to say that I will do this and I will make myself like that is also a misnomer. Because after all, we need to realize that it is the Lord who is doing everything. And if I am able to take some actions to reduce my papa, if I'm able to take some actions to try and reach towards God, then that also is happening by His grace only. But whatever it may be, at least that effort we should have, and that effort will purify us. Ultimately, it is the Lord's grace which will result in our progress. But whatever actions we are expected to take, we should be doing those things. So, like that, when we do this, when we do Karma Yoga in this manner, it helps in self purification. Now, continuing further in the 12th shloka, Krishna explains that there is a difference between such Karma Yogis and people who are not behaving in this manner. The Karma Yogis are those who don't have any inferior motive in their mind. They only have superior motive of wanting to give pleasure to the Lord and of getting Atma Sakshatkara. But there are others who are of a different category. Those people work because of some inferior phala in their mind. So, what happens to them and what happens to the Karma Yoga? That difference is explained by Krishna in this 12th shloka. So, here he says, Yukta karma phalam tyaktva shanti mapnoti naishtikim ayukta kama karena phale sakto nibadhyate. So the karma yogis, offering the results of all activities to God, these karma yogis attain everlasting peace. Whereas those who are impelled means they are motivated, they are pushed by their desires. Such people with their desires, they work with a selfish motive. What happens to such people? They become entangled in this samsara because they are attached to the fruits of their actions. So here there are two kinds of people who are being described. One is yukta and the other is ayukta. So yukta are the karma yogis. Yukta refers to those who have control of their senses and mind. So such a person who is having complete control over his senses and mind, he does actions with no attachment to an inferior phala. His actions are performed because he wants a superior phala of giving joy to the Lord and superior phala of getting Atma Sakshatkara. Such a person, whatever action he does, ultimately he does not get caught up in that action and he is able to attain Shanti. Now, normally we say Shanti means peace. Here in this context, the Acharyas explain that the word Shanti is used by Krishna to mean Atmanubhava, the experience of the self. So that experience of Atmanubhava, which is everlasting, which is permanent, that is the outcome for a yukta. What happens to somebody who is ayukta? So for a person who is yukta, he gets Shanti, he gets Atmanubhava. What about the ayukta person? Such a person, ayukta means they have no control over their senses, over their mind. So what happens when somebody does actions without control of the senses and mind? He or she gets carried away in those actions, isn't it? So they do actions because they want certain worldly things. And when they get that, they feel happy. When they don't get that, they feel sad. And ultimately, they are only caught up forever in this samsara cycle. So When we do action for an inferior phala, we get pushed into samsara. When we do action for a superior phala, we get liberated from samsara. So it is up to us to decide whether we want to continue to be ayukta or we want to make efforts to become yukta. Here, the Vyakyatas gave an example of how sometimes in certain places, like they say in Brindavan or in some many other pilgrimage places, if you see, there will be a lot of monkeys, especially these places which are on the hill and such places. There'll be sometimes a lot of monkeys which are in those spots, right? And what happens then? Everybody, there are warning boards and all which are put up, which tell that be careful of the monkeys and so on. Now, it is observed that always these monkeys, they will be all around the place. Now, how do they choose to target some people and why they leave quiet other people? So, it has been observed generally that all those pilgrims who are traveling and who are having something in their hand which is attractive to the monkey, those people will be troubled by the monkeys. But if there is somebody who is not carrying anything in their hand, then the monkeys do not bother about those people. What is the reason now? Because it is the item in that person's hand which is either attracting the monkey or having no interest for the monkey. So, similarly, if we are going to stay attracted to things in this world, right? If we are like the monkeys, now, as long as there are things we are attached to in this world, then we will keep getting attached to that and we have no shanti. We don't have Atmanambhava. We are not able to focus on anything in our spiritual journey. But if we are not carrying anything, if we don't have any attachments in this world, if we are not bothered about particular outcomes, we are not bothered about getting promotion, getting job, getting this, getting that, bigger house, bigger family, we are not bothered about all those things, then there is nothing for us to hold on to in this samsara. So then we will not be troubled. Like this, it is explained. So here, what is the message that we can learn from the shlokas we have studied today? So one thing is like about that lotus. Now, actually, scientists have done a lot of studies on this lotus leaf, and they have found that this lotus leaf has developed some kind of modifications because of which there is some kind of a hydrophobic effect which is created. Hydrophobic means water repelling effect. So there is, like, they have discovered that if all leaves have certain types of structures on their surface, if you look at it microscopically, then this lotus leaf has an entirely modified form of architecture. So because of that modification, it has become such that even if the water is there on the leaf, then that leaf does not absorb that water. It does not get wetted by that water. So that modification the lotus leaf has, and because of that it is untouched by the water, although it is living in the water itself. So in our life, what is it that we need to do now? We also have to modify our mental architecture. We have to modify how our mind works. We have to modify how our senses work. So if we are going to just have the normal senses and the normal mind like everybody else in the world, then we will get lost in this world. We will be wetted by the water and we will be completely lost in the ups and downs, the joys and sorrows of our samsara. If we want to be like the lotus leaf, then we, just as the leaf has modified its architecture, we have to modify our mental makeup. We have to change the way we look at things. We have to change our attitude towards things. And then we will be able to stay in this samsara and yet not be affected by it. Stay in samsara, do all karma, do all actions for the joy of the Lord, and our karma will become karma yoga. Here again, the Vyakyatas, the Acharyas also have told about the example. Now, when Vibhishana came to surrender to Rama, you remember there was a big discussion about whether he should be accepted or not. And at that time, very strongly, Sugriva did not want him to be accepted because he said he is the enemy's brother. How can we accept? So at that point of time, Rama realized that why Sugriva is opposing, because Sugriva is very worried about the safety of Rama. He feels, I have promised Rama to fight Ravana and get back Sita successfully. Now, if this Vibhishana comes and he does something and Rama is harmed by him, then I will have gone back on my word. So that is why Sugriva is actually worried about taking Vibhishana. At that time in the Valmiki Ramayana, there is a shloka where Lord Rama tells Sugriva that, see, you, actually speaking, I don't need Vibhishana. Okay, you are saying I should not take Vibhishana. But actually, I don't need you also. I don't need you, Sugriva. I don't need Hanuman. I don't need these Vanaras. I don't need Jambavan. I don't need anybody. I myself, with just the tip of my fingers, I can kill Ravana. I can destroy Ravana. If we remember the example of Narsimha Avatara, that is what the Lord did, isn't it? He didn't even use his finger, he used his nails, he used the tip of his nails to destroy Hiranyakashipu. Similarly, as if remembering that, the Lord is telling Sugriva that I don't need anybody. Then Sugriva says, okay, then why did you come to us? Why are you having this big army? Why have we all come here then? So Rama says that I don't need you, but this is an opportunity for you to render service. And by doing this seva of fighting in this Dharma Yuddha, you will get purified. So, similarly, also in this world, there is nothing that is there for us to do. There is nothing that we can do. We told we must do whatever we are doing to give pleasure to the Lord. But in reality, it is not as if we are capable of doing anything. But if we take the opportunity to try and do those things, it is a chance for us to purify ourselves. The Lord is so compassionate, the Lord is so full of karuna that He has given us all these opportunities. So it is up to us to use those opportunities to do all we can for the Lord's pleasure, and in that process, we will be purifying ourselves, and that will give the real ananda to the Lord. So let us pray that Krishna will bless us to be able to understand these things, to be able to practice them in our life, and we will go ahead in our sadhana. In the Stotra Ratna, there is one shloka by Swami Yamunacharya, who was the Acharya of Swami Ramanujacharya. So in that he says, Mamanatha yadasti smyaham sakalam taddi tavaiva madhava niyataswam iti prabuddhi rathava kim nu samarpayamite. O Lord Vishnu, O husband of Shri, of husband of the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, when I was in ignorance, I thought I will give you many things. I was ignorant at that time. I thought I will give you this, I will give you that. Now, because I have got jnana, I have gained knowledge, I have realized that everything that I own is already yours. Then what is left? What can I offer to you? This is the realization that is had by all great souls. So there is nothing like I. And then what is the question of I offering something to you, the Lord? Because everything is already yours. To say that I will do Atma Samarpana, I will offer myself to the Lord, is also wrong. Because I am not the owner here. This Atma is also the property of the Lord. So where is the question of saying that I am doing Samarpana to you? That also is not there. To just do actions with the bhava that it is all being done by the Lord through us for His own pleasure. That acceptance we have to work with. So let us pray. Let us offer Kritagnyata now. We have come to the end of our time. And let us pray that we will have the ability to do all these things. Let us offer gratitude, Kritagnyata, at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru for inspiring us to start and to join this satsang. And let us pray for their blessings and grace to always be on us. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And we will meet again next week on Thursday as usual. Thank you. Namaskar.